In the vast Pacific theater, as the Imperial Japanese Navy's mighty battleships like Yamato dominated the horizon, senior commanders viewed the U.S. Navy's Fletcher-class destroyers as fragile tin cans, lightly armored speedboats fit only for screening and harassment, no match for capital ships armed with massive 18.1-inch guns. But on October 25, 1944, during the Battle off Samar and the larger clash of Leyte Gulf, the escort carrier group Taffy 3, 6 small jeep carriers screened by just 3 destroyers and 4 destroyer escorts faced Vice Admiral Taker Creeder's overwhelming center force. On his own initiative, Commander Ernest E. Evans of the USS Johnston charged straight into the enemy line at flank speed, launching torpedoes that crippled the heavy cruiser Commando and drew fire away from the vulnerable carriers. Joined by USS Hull, USS Hedingham, and the destroyer escort USS Samuel B. Roberts, these tin cans fought with suicidal fury, torpedoing and shelling giants like Yamato, forcing evasive maneuvers and sowing chaos in the Japanese formation. From arrogance to utter defeat, the Japanese Admiralty watched as American grid turned their invincible armada into a retreating force, marking the death knell of the Imperial Navy's surface power. Section 1. The calm before the storm. Dawn patrol over Samar, October 25, 1944. 0600 hours. Off the eastern coast of Samar Island, Philippines. The sky is pale gray, streaked with the first light of dawn, the sea a restless mirror under scattered rain squalls. On the bridge of the escort carrier USS Fanshawe Bay, Rear Admiral Clifton A. F. Sprague scans the horizon through binoculars, the wind sharp with salt and diesel. His task unit 77.4. 3. Taffy 3, steams in lazy circles. 6 small jeep carriers Fanshawe Bay, St. Low, White Plains, Kalining Bay, Kitgan Bay, Gambia Bay guarded by 3 Fletcher-class destroyers and 4 destroyer escorts. They are the northernmost shield for General Douglas MacArthur's invasion beaches at Leyte, 130 miles to the south. These are not fleet carriers. No sleek Essex-class giants here. These are converted merchant hulls, barely 10,000 tons, carrying 20 to 30 aircraft each, mostly Avenger torpedo bombers and Hellcat fighters, meant for ground support, not fleet battles. Their escorts are even lighter, tin cans, as the Japanese mockingly call them. USS Johnston, DD-557, Hull, DD-533, Hedingham, DD-532, and the destroyer escorts Dennis, John C. Butler, Raymond, and Roberts. Their 5-inch guns are pop guns against battleship Admiral. Yet the crews are veterans hardened by months of kamikaze alerts and submarine hunts. You can almost feel the quiet tension, coffee steaming in mugs, lookouts straining against the grey, the low thrum of engines and the occasional clatter of aircraft engines warming on the flight decks. No one expects trouble this morning. Halsey's 3rd Fleet is humming far north. Kinkaid's 7th Fleet battleships are slugging it out in Srigay Strait to the south. Taffy 3 is just here to keep the skies clear and the subs away. Then, at 0645, radar pings. A contact big, fast, closing from the northwest. Pilots scramble to their planes. Sprague peers into the haze. Salutes emerge. Pagoda masts, massive hulls. 4 battleships including the monster Yamato, 8 heavy cruisers, destroyers. Vice Admiral Taker Creeder's center force, the Imperial Japanese Navy's last great surface armada. The Japanese have broken through San Bernardino Strait unopposed. Halsey has chased the decoy carriers north. Nothing stands between Creeder and the Leyte beaches except Taffy 3. Sprague's voice is calm over the TBS. All ships, prepare for surface action. Launch all aircraft. Make smoke and retire. The carriers turn east, flight decks alive with engines roaring. But the range closes fast. At 0657, Yamato opens fire, -18. 1-inch shells screaming across 20 miles of ocean. The carriers are sitting ducks. The tin cans are all that stand between the Japanese and total disaster for the invasion. And the Johnston is already turning toward the enemy. The charge of the tin cans, defiance in the face of giants, 0700 hours. The horizon darkens with pagoda masts, the unmistakable silhouettes of Japanese battleships breaking through the rain. On the bridge of USS Johnston, Commander Ernest E. Evans, known as the chief to his crew, a full-blooded Cherokee with a reputation for never backing down, watches the enemy close. No orders come from Admiral Sprague. The carriers are launching everything they have: Wildcats, Avengers, even planes with depth charges meant for subs. But the Japanese are already firing 18.1-inch shells from Yamato screaming overhead like freight trains, splashes towering 200 feet. Evans doesn't wait. Left full rudder, all engines ahead flank, he orders, voice steady. The Johnston heels hard, 35 knots tearing the sea white. Smoke generators belch thick black clouds to shield the carriers. Gunnery Officer Robert Hagen opens fire at 18,000 yards on the lead heavy cruiser Commando. 5-inch shells streak out, sparks flying as the director tracks. The crew fills the ship shutter run to full power, every rivet singing. You can almost smell a cordite, hear the frantic loading of the 5-inch mounts rammer, powder, projectile each shell a 54-pound answer to the giants ahead. Japanese lookouts mistake Johnston for a cruiser. Shells from Nagato and Haruna Barakata, but miss. Evans drives closer. At 10,300 yards he swings broadside and unleashes all 10 Mark 15 torpedoes in a single salvo. Fish away. The torpedoes streak out, wakes hissing. Commando sees them late, tries to turn. Too late. One slams into her bow, shearing it clean off. The cruiser slips, speed dropping to 12 knots, dead in the water. Sister Suzuya stops to transfer her captain. A near miss bomb from Gambia Bay's aircraft bends her propeller. 2 heavy cruisers out of the fight in minutes. But the Japanese are not idle. Yamato's secondary battery opens up, 6.1-inch shells whistling past. A 14-inch from Conlands close, spraying red dye across Johnston's hull. Evans wheels back into his own smoke, unscathed. The crew cheers, wild with adrenaline. They've bloodied the beast. The other tin cans follow. Hull charges next, Commander William Dow Thomas driving her at 35 knots toward Kong. She launches 5 torpedoes, forces the battleship to turn. Heedeman, under Commander Amos Hathaway, dodges near collisions in the smoke, fires on Kitma. Samuel B. Roberts, the smallest, the destroyer escort that fought like a battleship under Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland, closes Kitma at point-blank range, trading 5-inch fire, jamming her torpedo mount but scoring hits. The Japanese formation fractures. Krida's general attack order has scattered his ships. Destroyers lag, battleships maneuver independently. Yamato, the mightiest ship afloat, is forced to turn north to avoid torpedo wakes, perhaps holes, perhaps Johnston's pulling her out of the main action for precious minutes. From the Japanese bridges, confusion reigns. These fragile tin cans charge without hesitation. They should flee. Instead, they come on, guns blazing, torpedoes running. The mockery dies in the roar of battle. But the prize is coming. Johnston takes her first major hit, 3 14-inch shells from Yamato, ripping through hull and machinery. Speed drops, fires start. Evans is winded, fingers severed, but he stays on the bridge. The carriers flee east, under constant shelling. Gambia Bay takes hits, slows. The tin cans circle back, drawing fire, buying time. The Japanese giants are winded, disorganized. But they are not finished. And the little ships are bleeding, threatening, blood and fire on the open sea. 0745 hours. The battle off Samat has become a maelstrom of smoke, flame, and steel. The sea boils with shell splashes, oil slicks spreading like black winds, the air thick with the stench of cordite, burning paint, and diesel. On the bridge of the crippled USS Johnston, Commander Ernest A. Evans stands defiant, blood soaking his shirt from the severed fingers of his left hand. Shrapnel has torn through the superstructure. The ship lists, speed reduced to a painful 17 knots, but the 5-inch guns still bark whenever a target presents. Japanese heavy cruisers Kitma, Tone, Hago have closed to point-blank range. They pour fire into the little destroyer. A 8-inch shell smashes the bridge, killing most of the officers around Evans. He is thrown against a bulkhead, skull cracked open, but he climbs back to his feet, directing fire with a megaphone, voice hoarse but unbroken. Keep shooting, he orders. Don't stop. You can almost feel the agony, the deck tilting, water pouring through rents in the hull, men screaming as they fight fires, all manner guns with broken limbs. The crew knows they are dying. They fight anyway. Hull fares worse. Commander Thomas Dow has driven her straight at the battleships, trading salvos with Kong and Haruna. She takes multiple 14-inch and 8-inch hits. The forward magazine detonates in a blinding flash. The ship breaks in half, bow and stern sections drifting apart, men jumping into the burning water. Only 44 of her 350 crew will survive. Samuel B. Roberts, the smallest of them all, closes Kitma at suicidal range less than 4,000 yards. Her 5-inch/38 hammer the cruiser's superstructure. She scores multiple hits, sets fires, forces the Japanese ship to turn away. But the return fire is merciless. A 8-inch shell rips through her engine room. Another tears at bridge apart. Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland orders a abandoned ship as the Roberts begins to sink by the stern. He stays on the bridge until the end. The carriers, meanwhile, are taking punishment. Gambier Bay, the only American carrier ever sunk by surface gunfire in the entire war, is bracketed by cruiser shells. She slows, burns, finally rolls over and sinks at 0900 St. Leyte takes a kamikaze later in the morning, ironically, the first successful suicide and attack of the battle, and explodes in a mushroom of flame. Yet the tin cans have done the impossible. Their torpedoes and desperate charges have fractured Creda's formation. Yamato, the floating fortress, has been forced to maneuver wildly to avoid wakes, wasting precious time and ammunition. The heavy cruisers are damaged, scattered, burning. Confusion reigns on the Japanese bridges. Creda, from Yamato's towering pagoda, sees smoke, fire, sinking American ships and believes he is facing a much larger force. Reports from his scouts speak of fleet carriers, battleships. He does not know these are jeep carriers and tin cans. At 0911, Creda makes the decision that will haunt Japanese naval history. All ships, retire north, he signals. The center force, still the most powerful surface fleet in the world at that moment, turns away from the undefended Leyte beaches. They leave behind burning wrecks, dead comrades, and the bitter taste of an opportunity lost. The surviving American ships, Johnston still afloat, though barely watch the pagoda masts fade into the rain. The carrier's aircraft return from strikes, strafing the retreating Japanese. The sea is littered with wreckage, light rafts, men clinging to debris. Evans, bleeding out on his bridge, gives one last order: abandon ship. Johnston rolls over and sinks at 1,000 hours. Of her crew of 327, only 141 will be rescued 2 days later. Evans goes down with his ship. He will be awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously, the first Native American naval officer to receive it. The tin cans have turned mockery into legend. The Japanese admirals who once laughed at these fragile toys have witnessed their navy's last great surface battle end in retreat, confusion, and defeat. But the cost has been terrible. And the sea remembers aftermath on the waves, the bitter price of heroism. October 25, 1944. Late morning. The rain has thickened into a steady downpour, turning the sea off Samara into a grey, oil-smeared wasteland. Wreckage drifts everywhere. Jagged steel plates, light rafts half submerged, empty shell casings bobbing like brass confetti. The smell of burning fuel and scorched metal hangs heavy in the humid air. On the battered bridge of USS Hedinen, Commander Amos Hathaway watches the Japanese centered force disappear into the northern rain squalls. Yamato's enormous silhouette is the last of fate, still majestic, still terrifying, yet retreating. The battleship that could have reached Lake Gulf and annihilated the invasion fleet has turned away. Creda's decision will be debated by historians for generations. Fear? Confusion? Overestimation of the American force? Perhaps all three. But the fact remains, the greatest surface fleet Japan would ever assemble has been repulsed by 6 jeep carriers and 7 small escorts. The cost is immediately visible. Gambier Bay lies somewhere beneath the waves, the only American aircraft carrier ever sunk by surface gunfire. St. Leyte burns furiously a few miles away, victim of the first successful kamikaze strike of the day. Johnston is gone sunk at 10:10 after taking at least 25-inch, several 6-inch, and multiple 8-inch and 14-inch hits. Hull rests in 2 pieces on the bottom. Samuel B. Roberts follows her down shortly after 9 o'clock, having fought a cruiser to a standstill until she could fire no more. You can almost hear the quiet that follows the roar, the creak of damaged hulls, the crackle of fires being fought, the low moans of the wounded. Survivors cling to rafts and floating debris. Many are covered in oil, some are burned, most are in shock. They look at each other in disbelief. They survived. Against all odds, they survived. In the radio rooms of the surviving ships, frantic messages fly. Admiral Sprague's voice, normally calm, carries an edge of raw emotion. Where is Task Force 34? Where is Halsey? The Third Fleet battleships are still chasing the decoy carriers far to the north. The mistake will cost lives and reputations, but it cannot undo what has already happened here. By early afternoon, the remaining Taffy 3 ships and their aircraft continue harassing the withdrawing Japanese. Avengers drop torpedoes and bombs on stragglers. One final hit on Kikma forces her to sink later that day. The center force limps back through San Bernardino Strait, bloodied and humiliated. In Tokyo, the Imperial Navy High Command receives the fragmented reports. The plan to crush the American landings has failed. The surface fleet, once the pride of the empire, will never again mount a major fleet action. From this day forward, Japan's navy will rely almost exclusively on submarines, aircraft, and the growing terror of kamikaze attacks. Back on the American side, the exhausted crews begin rescue operations as soon as the immediate threat recedes. Destroyers and destroyer escorts circle back through the debris fields. Men are pulled from the water, wrapped in blankets, given hot coffee and morphine. Many ask the same question in dazed voices: did we really stop them? They did. In the days that followed, the Battle of Leyte Gulf would be recorded as the largest naval battle in history, spanning 4 major actions over 3 days. But it is the action off Samantha 5 between tin cans and giants that enters legend. Commander Ernest A. Evans receives the Medal of Honor posthumously, one of 5 awarded for the battle. Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland of Samuel B. Roberts receives it as well, along with the ship's crew, earning a collective Navy unit commendation. The Japanese admirals who once dismissed the American destroyers as fragile toys never laughed again. Their mockery had been answered with the most improbable act of courage in modern naval history: 7 small ships charging straight at the heart of an armada, refusing to yield, and winning the day through sheer audacity and sacrifice. The Pacific belonged to the United States now. The Imperial Japanese Navy's surface power was finished, and the tin cans had written their name in immortality, the Empire's twilight, from mockery to oblivion. November 1944. Tokyo Harbor. The once mighty Imperial Japanese Navy limps back to its moorings, hull scarred by shell fire and bomb blasts, crews gaunt and hollow-eyed. Vice Admiral Takeo Krita stands on the deck of Yamato, the super battleship that was meant to be the Empire's unbreakable sword. She survived Samat, but her guns fired more at phantoms than foes. The air is thick with the acrid scent of defeat, rust, oil, and the unspoken shame of retreat. In the war rooms of the combined fleet headquarters, admirals gather under dim lights, maps spread like funeral shrouds. Isara Yamamoto is long dead, shot down over Bougainville the previous year, but his successors echo his earlier arrogance. They had laughed at the American tin cans, those nimble destroyers dismissed as fragile annoyances, screens for carriers that could be swatted aside by the Yamato's 18.1-inch might. Now, the laughter is silenced. Leyte Gulf has stripped away the illusion. The surface fleet is broken: 4 carriers, 3 battleships, 10 cruisers, and 11 destroyers sunk across the battle's 4 actions. The Imperial Navy's carrier arm is gone, its battleships reduced to floating batteries defending home waters. You can almost sense the weight of it, the Empire unraveling thread by thread. Okinawa looms in the future, where Yamato will sortie one last time on a suicide mission, sunk by waves of American aircraft without firing a shot at the enemy fleet. Kamikazes will take their place, divine winds of desperation. The admirals know it. The war at sea is lost. America's industrial might, endless carriers, endless tin cans, has overwhelmed them. Yet in the American camps, the story spreads like wildfire. Sailors on Liberty and Lithium recount the tale of Taffy 3, how 7 little ships charged an armada and won. Medals are struck, citations written. The tin cans become symbols of American grit. Johnston's charge etched into naval lore, Evans's last stand a beacon for generations of destroying. Leyte Gulf secures the Philippines, opens the path to Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and ultimately Tokyo Bay. The mockery reversed. What the Japanese dismissed as toys had become the reapers of their naval empire. In the vast Pacific, now an American lake, the echoes of the desperate morning off Samara remind all who sail: courage, not size, wins wars. And the admirals who laughed, they face the dawn of surrender, their fleets go